Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Ali, starring Will Smith, Mario Van Peebles, Jamie Foxx, John Voight, and Jada Pinkett Smith, and directed by Michael Mann. And I do remember going to movie theaters for this all those years ago. 20 years ago, for that matter. I mean, my God, I'm getting old. But did I like it then? Let's get into it and then we'll see. Because I just remember it being a blank in my mind. So let's get into it. The movie takes place between 1964 through 1974 and is a biopic of how 22-year-old Cassius Clay became a famous boxer named Muhammad Ali. As we open with Cassius Clay, played by Will Smith, jogging in the morning and trains for boxing at the gym as the music goes on for 5 minutes to be exact, which is a mistake on director Michael Mann's part. And we see Cassius as a little boy and grows up to be Will Smith in a church. Meanwhile, at the gym, we see Cassius' manager, Angelo Dundee, who trains Cassius and who comes up to him at his place. Drew, let me see if I'm saying this right. Dundee Brown, played by Jamie Foxx, as he co-trains Cassius to box, while a photographer named Howard Brigham photographs Cassius as a boxer, and he weighs himself, which is typical for a boxing match, and Sonny Liston, and gets interviewed by the press, including Howard Cosell, played by John Voight. And I do like the characters, but there's times the movie got pretty unfocused, as there were times the camera moved quite a bit to the point it was making me dizzy. But I do like boxing scenes, as it gets very intense at times, and I do like to see movies about boxing, as I'm sort of a fan of the sport, sort of, I'll say, because it could get very intense at times. Cassius, after a while, in the boxing match with Sonny Liston, can't see a damn thing. Even his opponent, but his cured after round 5, I would say, as he continues to punch up Sonny Liston. And after that round, Sonny spits out his mouth guard, and Cassius wins the fight and celebrates the victory. And I really like Will Smith in the role. It's probably one of his best performances in movie history, and the cinematography looks damn good. Cassius gets a visit from Rudy Clay and invites him to go to Africa, and Rudy Clay, by the way, is his brother, as he goes to Herbert Muhammad and calls him Herbert calls him Muhammad Ali as a new name, while we see Malcolm X, played by Mario Van Peebles. And I haven't seen the movie where Denzel Washington betrays Malcolm X in a Spike Lee movie, but I like Mario Van Peebles' take on him, despite I haven't seen him in anything, I should say. But I don't know much about him except he was an inspiration back in the days for African Americans in history, just like Martin Luther King Jr., who I believe is in this movie, portrayed by an actor whom I don't know all that well, as Cassius goes to Africa with his brother as he was being spied on by the government. Cassius meets Sanji, played by Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, and dances with her in a scene that's blue. And she's barely in this movie. And he goes to her place and have sexual intercourse with her in her place, and he wants to marry her immediately, like a snap of a finger. My God, after the first night. And the next scene, while Cassius works out, we see Malcolm and Martin Luther King Jr., which could be a cool salute to African Americans, but unfortunately, it goes nowhere for me, and I'm getting kind of bored at this point, as I'm here to watch a movie about a boxer, as we see Malcolm X getting shot and killed, and I don't need that scene in this movie, as it's a little too long at 2.5 hours, and it loses focus during the scenes. Cassius now switched his name to Muhammad Ali for good, and goes for another boxing match as he wins the fight. Ad picks a fight with he picks a fight with Sanji, and she leaves him as they get a divorce, but it happens. And that's why I remembered about this movie, as she was barely in it, and now I know why. Muhammad Ali is interviewed by Howard Cosell, which was a funny scene because Muhammad plays briefly with Cosell's hair. And the next scene, Muhammad gets arrested do- because he doesn't want to join the army, and that's something that I remember hearing about in my younger years, as he gets bailed out and his boxing license is suspended and is threatened to go to prison for 5 years for refusing to join the military, as it was the law at the time. Muhammad is recognized by Belinda, and she takes him to her place as he's working at an auto shop, and Martin Luther King Jr. is shot and killed, are going everywhere as riots are going on, and Muhammad wants to fight while watching a Joe Frazier fight, and he wants to fight Joe Frazier, whatever it takes. Drew sells Muhammad's champion belt, as Muhammad is very upset and fires Drew briefly. And Jamie Foxx is tremendous in the film, and this half hour could have been cut out, in my opinion. Muhammad gets his boxing license back thanks to Joe Frazier, and Drew comes to the gym clean and asks Muhammad to take him back, and Muhammad rehires Drew by his side, and he starts boxing again. And after Muhammad wins the fight, Herbert tells Muhammad it wasn't his idea, but more his father's idea, and Howard Cosell tells Muhammad he's free from the court and overturn his boxing license, and gets his license back. And we see a boxing match between Muhammad Ali and versus Joe Frazier, and I can't tell whether or not he won or lost which might be an editing problem, excuse me, as we move on to the next fight between the two, and wins that fight, and the managers are afraid of that he might become as bullseye, as he's 32 years old as we speak. And they go to Africa, and the next fight is between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman, as they're promoting it in Africa, and these scenes work pretty well. Belinda is worried about the fight, and Muhammad chooses not to talk about it, and he goes for a jog with some African kids jogging with him and cheering his name on, which is any other boxing movie in general, as it felt predictable but inspiring in a way. George has been hospitalized off screen and can't fight for 6 weeks, and they want to fight George and no one else, and these scenes work fine, I guess. Muhammad takes a walk with Veronica Porsche from America while married to Belinda, and he puts her out in the press and leaves Veronica, and she's humiliated as Muhammad takes a shower before the fight and gets to the fight, and everyone is cheering him on as the champion of the world, as George Foreman arrives and the announcer introduces them both, and the fight begins as it gets rough when George punches Muhammad but almost knocks him out while on the ropes. And George keeps punching and punching in the ribs, and there were times he can't get out of it, and eventually he gets out of it and fights George back and gets knocked out, and Muhammad Ali becomes champion of the world. And the climax isn't Rocky, but I'm talking about the original Rocky with Sylvester Stallone. But I like that we end with the boxing scene, and that's a way to end a boxing movie in general. But this movie's fine at best. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 5.7 out of 10. There were problems at times, like the editing, as it's not really pulled together, and there's times the movie got unfocused, and the performances by Will Smith, Jamie Foxx, and John Voight are tremendous, but the movie is fine at best. The shaky camera thing by director Michael Mann needs to really stop, particularly in half of the movie, as the movie is 35 minutes too long. But the movie was fine at best, but I like the fact that it ends with the last boxing match. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and until next time, Rubble, young man, Rubble.